Hello and welcome back to Electric Autonomy Canada. My name is Stephanie Wallcraft. I'm a contributor to the publication, and today we're learning more about the results of a survey executed by Angus Reid and commissioned by Kia Canada that explores gaps and misconceptions regarding electric vehicles with Canadian consumers. Here to represent Kia Canada is the automaker's Director of Marketing, Michael Kopke. Michael, thank you for joining us today.
Very excited to be here, Stephanie. Thank you very much.
Let's start just with a little bit more detail about why it is that Kia Canada decided to execute this survey.
Green awareness is changing quite a bit. And we are committed from a green point of view, corporately, globally, to continue to grow within this space. So as part of that, in spite of our successes, we wanted to go out and make sure, do we really know where Canadians' heads are at?
And getting into the survey's findings, anyone who works in the EV world will find these to be a very familiar list of barriers that Canadians have listed for you to EV adoption. It's charging availability, charging time, range, and cost. And so I'm wondering if you, from the survey's findings, were able to get a sense as to which ones continue to present the most significant barriers to EV adoption for Canadians, and maybe dig a little bit into those disparities, those myths that were covered in the survey as well.
The survey brought up nothing surprising from our point of view, and yourself as a journalist, not surprising either. But the overall infrastructure and range tend to be the two top ones that tend to come out. It has to do with just general awareness. Like, all of us are very familiar with gas cars. Some of us are very familiar with diesel cars based on what we've had. They've been in the market a long, long time. And as much as sort of green vehicles, hybrid, plug-in hybrid, or pure electric are growing, they're still not commonplace just yet. So there is, quite frankly, a lack of experience with them. Taxi cabs, Ubers, your friends, family that might have a car. Therefore, a lot of people don't literally get the experience and the opportunity to learn those things. Very few people, probably none, have actually learned to drive on an electric car yet. So therefore, there's just very little awareness and knowledge. So there's part of that is driving that. We're all very familiar, this is specific to the charging part. With our gas cars, there's a gas station on every corner. There's not a charging station on every corner. There doesn't need to be either, actually. And so there's a pure visual part for customers, so they just don't see the charging infrastructure. So therefore, there's a sense that there isn't any there. But the second part of it, and this goes to the education part, is you don't need a charging station on every corner because you're going to have one at home. And the reality is you will leave your house with a quote unquote full tank of gas every day. So there's that part of it that comes along too. The last part I was thinking, and this comes through my own use of, as I drive an electric car from Kia, and it's only in the car you start to realize, oh, wait a minute, there are charging stations everywhere. But the reality is, when they're at the mall or when they're at the restaurant, they're actually quite small. Like, they're very slender, they're 4 or 5 feet high, and you don't see them because they're small, but you also don't see them because there's a car parked in front of it charging. So it's just a parked car. So there is this, it's not a misconception, but there's just lack of awareness because people just don't know what to look for.
So this information that you've gathered is now going forward, be the basis for an education campaign that Kia is kicking off. Tell us a little bit about what your plans are for that, and which aspects Kia has found are important to focus on when undertaking an education campaign in terms of trying to guide Canadians through these thought processes into EV adoption.
Well, it's interesting because the research, the survey findings have actually reconfirmed the strategy. We've already started deploying the strategy 2 years ago. So if you go to kia.ca, we have a whole green section, and our approach there is actually, quite frankly, education. What is a hybrid? What is a battery electric vehicle? How are they different? Because that's part of the education process. There's another layer in there about range, to help people understand how far they really go. Then there's the cost of ownership side. We have a little tool there where people can plug in their cost of gas per liter, and they can plug in their local electrical charge in their local community and get a sense on your yearly mileage. What does that actually mean to you? So our approach has been that pure education. Yeah, we have some EVs and hybrids and plug-in hybrids to sell you, but we really wanted to become a place where, Kia will help you get educated and understand what's going on, including helping people understand what the various government incentives are across the country too.
Let's focus on the dealership side, because from the corporate level, you can communicate all you want, but if the customers showing up in the dealerships and not only aren't getting the education, but are being perhaps guided into vehicles that are an easier sell, that can present a barrier to getting those EVs on the road. So what's being done on the corporate side to educate dealers?
First off, all the Kia Canada dealers in Canada need to choose to become an EV dealer. It's not all of them. Dealers need to make a certain investment to make sure they have the right tools to be able to service vehicles, et cetera. And then once they make that commitment, there's also an expectation level from the corporation, Kia Canada. There needs to be a certain level of training on the sales floor, the service floor, and the number of technicians that are permanently staffed to be able to service the vehicles that go through. So it's a commitment from those Kia Canada dealers when they make that choice to become an EV dealer. So there's definitely that there, and we have our expectations on their side too. The other part of what you're saying, what a salesperson's role is to do is make sure the customer ultimately goes into the right vehicle for them, whether that's a sports car or an SUV or an EV. Many customers come in thinking, they want something particular because they saw part of our advertising or their friend got something, but it's through that dialogue that you understand, do you need 3-row, 2-row? Do you need gas or do you need electric? Some people come in looking for electric, but based on their personal lifestyle and what they actually use, a plug-in hybrid actually might be better, Or if people really have long distances or need to tow, then, our full-size Telluride is going to be the better answer for them, as much as they might want an electric vehicle. So that's the role of the salesperson there, and they guide them depending on that. Sometimes what the customer says and wants might not be the best solution for them.
So is Kia then viewing the adoption process not as a volume goal-driven thing so much then that's being passed on to dealers in terms of expected sales numbers and that sort of thing? Is it more of an organic process?
At this point, I'd say it is organic. There's quite a bit demand out there for electric vehicles, and we've been able to meet that demand and sell everything. So it's not like we have heavy inventory or anything like that. And this kind of goes back to the survey. We're seeing this growing interest, and we want to make sure we understand where the customer is coming from and what they need. So there's no push per se, no.
And that actually leads well into my next question about wait times, because we've been hearing a lot in the last couple years that that the supply can't keep up actually with the demand at whatever level it is, and that your sister company Hyundai Canada has managed to secure more Kona EVs for 2021 model year and does not have a wait list for that vehicle for the first time in its history. Can you compare, say, the Soul EV and the Nero EV, which are very similar in powertrain platform, to that? What's going on with the Kona? Are you similar on sales numbers? Are you similar in demand? Are you making moves to meet that demand in similar ways? What's the story on Kia's end?
Well, I would start off by saying that demand for electric cars is not just a Canadian thing; it's a global thing. It's all over the world, and it's not a Kia thing either. All OEMs are struggling to meet demand as various governments around the world put in policies, et cetera, and customer incentives and interest also varies across the world. So all corporations, including ours, are trying hard to match supply with demand. So that's kind of a reality in the industry. What I would say for us in 2020, we have inventory of EV cars right now. It's not a problem. In the beginning of the year, it was a little bit of a different situation as corporately we tried to match supply with demand around the world. What that meant for Kia Canada in 2020 was our production was back-end loaded. So in the beginning part of the year, you might not have been able to find an EV in inventory. Now it's different. And going forward, absolutely things have changed. We have our supply is up quite a bit for next year. And in addition, we've been able to manage the supply in each month too. So as a customer goes into a showroom, they're going to be able to find an EV, whether it's a Soul EV or a Nero EV, et cetera. So that's been a big situation that's been addressed.
How is Canada doing in terms of demand globally and influence globally in terms of EV rollout for Kia?
Well, we're very excited. We have the cars that are on the market now in Canada, but we also have plans over the next couple of years. You've heard globally that Kia will have 7 EVs launching globally between now and 2025. We've got a partnership with SK Technologies, which is a battery manufacturing partner. So that's part of the strategic plan to make sure we have the supply side managed and be able to meet demand around the world. So it's a strategic pillar for Kia globally to really dive into this green space in general, whether it's pure EV, PHEV or HEV also. And then of course we continue with our advancements in fuel economy technology and continuing to drive performance on the ICE cars.
Every OEM seems to be handling distribution differently across the country in terms of focusing product rollout on jurisdictions where there are provincial incentives that bring the cost down, end cost to the consumer, or maybe not doing that so much because the federal, the IZEV incentive does its own work, and there may be potential in other markets. What's Kia's viewpoint on, first of all, whether it's the right thing to do to continue to have these incentives in place and have the EV market dependent on them, and how the company sees that maybe panning out over time, and also how that strategy pans out within the company in terms of product distribution?
Well, in very simple terms, in Kia Canada, we match supply with demand. So if there's a customer order for a Niro EV, a Soul EV, doesn't matter what province it's in, it will get matched, and we will sell that car there. As you go across the country, though, in each province, there is differing demand for sure. Some of it is absolutely influenced by not just the federal incentive, which applies obviously across the country, but Quebec and BC have provincial strategies around incentive plans, and for sure that influences demand. So, the majority of our sales for our EV cars do happen in those two provinces, but we have EV dealers across the country too. So the federal support definitely helps on that regard too. And like I said, we'll match supply and demand no matter where the customer is.
Sure. Michael, I think that the traditional avenues of communication to consumers are pretty well established in terms of, speaking to the media and your own internal campaigns. Is there anything innovative that you're exploring as you try to get this message out to Canadian consumers?
It's a good question, Stephanie. We've, as you say, the traditional automotive media, for the most part, are very engaged in EV, educated, understand how it works, the benefits and the ins and outs of it. And as the survey sort of reinforced, the general consumer still a bit unaware. So one of the things we've done is we've working with, we call them ambassadors, but local influencers across the country, and offering them rides up, road trips, quite frankly, in the case of COVID, in Soul EV, Niro EV, various green cars, so they can speak to their followers, those people that engage with them in a layperson type of way. Here's how I use my vehicle in a regular way. I took a road trip to Mont Tremblant, for example, and there and back in a single charge. And because of the infrastructure and the navigation system, if I was concerned, there's lots of charging stations everywhere. So this is one of the things we're doing to help people understand it in their terms, and trying to demystify a little bit of the technology and what it's really like. And the overall message we have is it's actually really not that difficult to switch to an electric car.
Overall, maybe you can wrap up for us how the survey has informed Kia Canada's EV strategy and view on the EV market going into the future, as it becomes increasingly important to not only meet demand but create demand and have this transition take place over time.
So I think it's always good to ground yourself in where the customer's headset is. So that's, part of what we did. It also was comforting to sort of reinforce that, okay, we have a good enough idea, and some of the things we're doing now are good. So we just need to do more of that. And of course, there were learnings for us to help us innovate beyond that. I would say getting engagement from the media like yourself to sort of foster that communication and help get the message out is very, very helpful. And overall, we're excited about what the future has to hold for Kia as we dive deep into this. You were part of our Sorento 21 model year launch not too long ago, where we alluded to the fact that we'll be a hybrid version of that and a plug-in hybrid for that later in 2021. So we're in it for the long haul. We're very excited about our future.
Thanks again to Michael for sharing these findings with us, and thanks to all of you for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss another update from Electric Autonomy Canada.